Right, time now to speak to the opposition. I'm delighted that I'm joined now by the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Will.
Good to speak to you. I'll start with something that we discussed with the government this morning about deport now and appeal later, this policy that's being announced. And one of the consequences of that, based on the conversation we had with the government, is it's possible for rapists that they might never serve a day in prison if they're deported to a country that then releases them. What's your view on that, given the competing pressures of wanting a deterrent for illegal entry, but also to ease pressure on the prison service?
Well, can I firstly say, I think the general direction of travel here is the right one. In fact, it builds on legislation that we took through in 2014. But there will be cases, and you've cited one of them, where it would not be appropriate to deport somebody under those circumstances if they're simply going to be taking effectively UK taxpayers' cash, a free flight back home, not being incarcerated, and potentially, as I think Alex Chalk has been saying recently, the way he summed it up, going onto TikTok and taunting the people whose crimes they had committed against. And this is why we will need to look at the detail of this when it comes back to the House of Commons in the autumn when we return.
In terms of policies of this ilk to try and tackle the small boats problem, are you largely in support of them?
Well, as I say, it's building on something that a Conservative government brought in, and I think that's the right direction to travel. But if the question is the government, through this measure, actually going to resolve the small boats crisis? Absolutely not. We've seen a record number of illegal crossings across the Channel this year, 25,000 in total. And this suggestion that the Prime Minister made before the election that they were going to smash the gangs has come to absolutely nothing. In fact, the numbers are going in the wrong direction. And what you need, right at the heart of any effective policy, is a deterrent. People knowing that if they come here, they will be swiftly deported and sent back. Now, if you can reach that point, and we put forward a bill that would have done exactly that recently, but the government chose to resist that, if you can get that kind of deterrent in, you can start to resolve the problem. But there's nothing that the government has done to date that is suggestive of that, and that's why those numbers are still going up.
What should be done to the 522 people arrested over the weekend who are supporting Palestine action?
So that's a matter for the police and for the courts and the magistrates' courts or whoever these people end up before. Look, there is no good reason in our country ever to shut down free speech, and we will stand up for that as a party vigorously. However, you have a prescribed organisation in the form of Palestine Action, an organisation that's carried out criminal activities, damaging military assets, attacking a police officer, for example, with a sledgehammer. This is a prescribed terrorist group. And the law is very clear. If you are actively in support of that group, you are breaking the law and you must suffer the consequences. So I think the police had an understandably difficult time over the weekend, and I have to say I sympathise with them because it was quite a job they had to do. But they did the right thing in enforcing the law.
Do you think that something has gone wrong over the last month? If it's right that they were prescribed, should there have been a better communication to explain why it was right that they were prescribed? I mean, the very fact that there were 522 arrests, when in the entire past year there were only 248 arrests based on terrorism laws. Does that suggest that something hasn't been done in the appropriate way?
I think people need to really look and think about what the issue is here. This isn't about the issue around Gaza, Palestine, Israel, etc. It is about a particular organisation that is engaged in the kind of activities that I've just set out, criminal damage, terrorist-based activities. Prescription is a very serious moment from an organisation. It will have been taken on board on the basis of some serious security, national security advice. But I think the second thing that people should reflect on when they do this is they're absorbing police time that would be better used pursuing criminals. And so I think it is important that we keep getting that message across, but I think the police have acted in the right way over this weekend.
Let's talk about the economy. Stepping back, in the short term, is it fair to say that the data hasn't worsened significantly? Unemployment data, for example, still historically low?
Well, unemployment's risen every month since this government came into office, and it was at a near historic low when we left office. We had a hugely positive...
But it's still at a historic low.
But it's rising. And the other things that are going wrong is clearly inflation now is expected to go even higher than was previously anticipated. That is keeping interest rates higher for longer, so that's affecting people with their mortgages, it's affecting businesses borrowing money, and it's also translating into a huge servicing cost for our ever-burgeoning national debt that this government is adding to through all this excessive borrowing that it's doing. We're spending about £100 billion a year, Wilf, just on the interest on our national debt. That's about twice what we spend on defence. Now, so that's not going in to help our public services, that's just simply going to pay our creditors. And we know that we're heading through a summer of cruel uncertainty now, with people knowing that taxes are going to be rising in the autumn to cover the black hole that this government has created. And none of that is good for growth, and it's not good for living standards, it's not good for our country, I'm afraid.
If you were confronted with a similar situation, would you bring forward the autumn statement? Would you knock the issue on its head?
Right, well, that's like saying, if the car had been driven into the wall at 100 miles an hour, there we are, Mel, take the steering wheel and tell us how you get out of that one. We would not have got us into this position in the first place. We would have not taxed the living daylights out of businesses that has destroyed growth. We would have been leaning very heavily into productivity. Instead of just giving huge pay rises to trained drivers, junior doctors, we would have been making sure that we got a more productive workforce as part of that arrangement, and we would have borne down on the welfare bill in a very serious way. And of course, this government has shown that even its meagre attempts to do that failed because its backbenchers won't bear it. And so I'm afraid I'm rather pessimistic about the coming months, not at all optimistic about any of the figures we're seeing at the moment.
Again, this is, I guess, another hypothetical, and you might use your car crash analogy again, but if you're confronted with the options that are there at the moment, would it be better to abandon manifesto pledges and pull one of the big levers of tax rather than those around the edges? Or would it be better even to free yourself from the straitjacket of fiscal rules?
So I don't think it's right for me to try and write Rachel's coming budget, because I think that's going to be an absolute horror show. But I think it is fair to say that the black hole that she has created, which could be as large as 40 or 50 billion pounds, according to the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, widely respected forecaster, if it's of that size, it might be very difficult for the government to avoid now actually going into one of the big heavy lifting taxes like national insurance, where they've obviously already been, but income tax and VAT. And if they were to do that, that would be an extraordinary breach of trust with the British people, because they made it very clear in their manifesto and subsequently that they will not do anything on those taxes at all. But I'm afraid this is a government that's running out of road and running out of options.
Finally, when will we get very clear policies? I've asked you this many times. Is it going to come alongside conference? Is it now weeks, months away? OK. Well,
I think you are getting a number of very clear policies. We've just discussed illegal migration and the disapplication of the Human Rights Act, for example, when it comes to deporting people, is a very clear, firm policy that we have. On tax that we've just discussed, we will unwind the Labour government's changes to agricultural property relief, so the farm tax. Same with business property relief, so that we'll make sure that people can pass a business on generation to generation without destroying that business, removing VAT from school fees. So there are things that we are saying as we go along, but we will take the time, and it's right that we do, on some of the deep issues facing our country to come up with the right solutions. And I think that's the right approach that we have.
Mel Stride, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.